will be on the right hand side. Actually, that's two thumbs. Hello, everybody. You're at the Student TED Talk for the first breakout session. I'm a moderator. My name's Melissa Minus. I go to the School of Law here. I'm going to introduce to you Pat O'Connor and Augusta Herman. Augusta's going to go first. She's a senior medical anthropology major here at Creighton with minors in biology and French. Over the summer of 2014, Augusta traveled to Haiti to conduct anthropological research and has had the opportunity to present her research at the American Anthropological Association in Washington, D.C. last December. And then again, she'll be presenting at the Society for Applied Anthropology in Pittsburgh in March. Her passions for anthropology, health, and social justice have inspired her to pursue a Master's of Public Health next year, and then she'll study social and behavioral sciences and attempt to improve local community and global health. And then Pat O'Connor, he's a second-year medical student here at Creighton. He graduated from the University of Minnesota, Duluth in 2011 with a bachelor's in biology. And then following graduation, he moved to Anchorage, Alaska, where he worked for a year with the Covenant House of Alaska as a Jesuit volunteer. And Pat spent the following year in Anchorage working in the emergency department at Providence, Alaska Medical Center. In 2014, over the summer, following his first year of medical school, he led a Project Cura trip to Northeast India, which was his first service learning trip abroad. And in his free time, Pat enjoys climbing mountains, deep thinking, and music. So it's very good. So if you guys have any questions, I also passed around the attendance. There's a student organization attendance and then a normal attendance if you guys get started. I'll give it to you.
Good morning, everyone. So like Melissa said, I spent the summer abroad in Haiti, and so this is just a little talk to tell you guys about what I learned and what I learned about myself for the most part, and how I view the world today. So I feel fortunate enough to have had the opportunity to follow my passions and explore my dreams, and even throw out old plans and develop new ones for my life. We are all fortunate enough to do these things. We have had adequate education and supportive home environments to get us where we are today, to places where we can accomplish our goals and discover ourselves. And not all people are so lucky. In fact, across the globe, there are people who are starving, living in homelessness, and protecting themselves from harm, and sometimes struggling to keep their loved ones alive. Realizing that this happens nearly everywhere, I developed a passion and goal to work towards eradicating this. I often reflect upon a certain day that didn't happen too long ago, January 12, 2010. For me, this day was probably just like any other. I was a junior in high school at the time, so I went to school, worried about high school things, ate lunch with my friends, the typical American high school experience. We're all here today at the Global Health Conference because we are passionate about something, whether that is healing or helping people, advocating for underserved populations, or simply being passionate about science and the human body. We are all here because we care about something, and for me, my passion emerged on this fateful day in January 2010. This day marks the devastating earthquake that brought Haiti to its knees. Within a matter of minutes, the world that Haitians knew came crashing down. Loved ones lost in the rubble, lives already full of strife had just become even more difficult. We might not remember exactly what we did on January 12, 2010, but there is not one Haitian who doesn't remember where they were and what they were doing when the earthquake hit. This event was what sparked my interest in Haiti and built a passion for serving its people. As a high school student, I thought that this would be through medicine. But as I realized years later, anthropological research would be my outlet to serve. In 2013, I decided to conduct research in Haiti, and throughout that school year, took steps towards accomplishing this goal. I arranged for a place to stay, a social work school that was run by an American called the Institut Travail Social Action Sociale, applied for funding, and designed a qualitative research project. The question I wanted to answer was inspired by Tracy Kidder's Mountains Beyond Mountains, a book about medical anthropologist and physician Paul Farmer. As I read the book, I was reminded of the 2010 earthquake and thought of something I hadn't before. After the earthquake, when all of these biomedical doctors went to serve Haiti, how did the Haitians react? Did their vastly different culture result in a distrust of biomedicine? Did they accept the care, but also seek care from traditional voodoo priests or other sources? In essence, I wanted to know how American biomedicine fit into the local Haitian context. It's something that we, as Americans, don't necessarily think or worry about on a daily basis. If we get sick, we go to the doctor and trust that whatever treatment he or she prescribes will help us get back to our normal lives as quickly as possible. American culture values biomedicine so highly that we often believe that it is the only truth. But that is not the case in many other parts of the world. Haiti is only one country with a vastly different culture among hundreds of others. The reason for Haiti's unique culture really stems back from the country's history of oppression. Upon discovery of the island that houses both Haiti and the Dominican Republic, the local Taino people soon disappeared because of disease and violence, a similar story to many other native people in the Americas. The French and Spanish colonized the island, which soon became a major stop in the slave trade. Haiti, then known as Saint-Domingue, was France's wealthiest colony, producing coffee, sugar, and other goods, mostly due to the labor of the slaves. In 1789, the slaves planned a revolt against their oppressors. The revolt lasted 15 years, led by Toussaint Louverture and Jean-Jacques Dessalines, and resulted in the first successful slave revolt. On May 18, 1803, Dessalines created the Haitian flag. Legend says that he took the French flag and ripped out the white center. He sewed the red and blue together. The red represented the colored people, and the blue represented the black citizens. The coat of arms was later added. The symbolic power of this flag still results in tremendous national pride to this day. However, in 1804, when independence was won, the rest of the world disagreed. The Western world was so disrupted by the success of the slaves that all countries, including the United States, halted trade with Haiti. Most countries didn't even recognize Haiti as a country. The U.S. didn't until we fought our own civil war. France forced Haiti to pay a debt of 150 million gold francs due to lost property in slaves, land, and equipment. From the start, Haiti was at a disadvantage. Their chances to be economically prosperous were slim. During the slave revolt, the African slaves found commonality among an Afro-Latin religion that we know today as voodoo. Often voodoo is portrayed in the media extremely negatively, either as something evil, which it is not, or in mockery. When I prepared to visit Haiti, I had to remove all of these preconceived notions from my mind about what voodoo was, which I believe is a necessary step prior to all travel to different cultures. For Haitians, voodoo can be very comforting and helps them to explain their lives to themselves, similar perhaps to other American practices that Haitians would find silly or unreasonable. In the realm of medicine, I was specifically curious about how Haitians view biomedicine for my research. Because of these vastly different cultural views, I expected Haitians to at least seek care from multiple sources, in addition to the hospital. Perhaps they would use traditional home remedies or seek care from a priest. I did find that people often try to treat themselves at home with a tea from the Asosi plant, which is an awfully bitter tea that they serve with salt instead of sugar. Or they would explain different herbal remedies. In general, though, patients did not seek care through voodoo sources. Instead, several themes about spirituality and religion and medicine have emerged from my research. First, medicine and religion are intertwined. People believe that it is God's will for others to become doctors, and praying is often a part of the healing ritual. Also, I found strong support for both biomedicine and traditional medicine. I speculate that this is because I was conducting my research within the Port-au-Prince metro area, where voodoo is not especially prevalent. Perhaps in more rural communities, voodoo has a more significant role, and biomedicine may not be as trusted. Another strong theme that I have found is that people are simply happy to be receiving care, regardless of whether or not it is coming from a biomedical doctor or a family member in their home. These themes reveal valuable information for any of us hoping to work in global health. I spent 3 months in beautiful Haiti, seeing the sights and experiencing Haitian daily life, in addition to working on my research. I absolutely fell in love with this nation and its people, even though it was so different from the daily life I was familiar to. Every day, I used public transportation, which are refurbished vans designed to fit 20 passengers and not necessarily comfortably. These vans were called tap-taps, and they were extremely convenient. However, I was always squished between 2 people, and it was always so hot that I couldn't tell if the sweat on my arms was from myself or my neighbor. One morning on the tap-tap, a young man hopped on and began playing music out loud on his phone. When John Legend's All of Me began playing, everybody on the tap-tap began to sing aloud. If there wasn't enough room to sit on the tap-tap, someone would stand and let their young child sit on the lap of a stranger. In my neighborhood, people were always chatting with each other and saying bonsoir to anybody who passed. People have heated debates about politics and religion with complete strangers. With every act of kindness, my heart melted a little bit, and I fell more in love with Haiti. What was most significant to me about Haitians, however, was their ability to share with complete strangers. My Haitian friends were always reminding me to partager, the Creole word for to share. It just amazes me that some of the poorest people in the world still are willing to give money to a beggar on the street, offer their home to strangers, or simply share a conversation with someone. Everyone here is shown dignity, which is what everyone deserves. These cultural differences were the most significant. Yes, Haitians live in a very different climate and have a very different economic situation, but these things didn't seem to matter. Crumbling cement buildings were typical. Rotting food and gasoline filled the air with their stench, and sometimes there wasn't water or electricity or even a bathroom. But when you are surrounded by people who love you unconditionally without really having to, that's all that matters. I took a chance when I decided to go to Haiti. I had no idea what I would get out of it. All I knew is that this is a place that I've always wanted to travel to. And what better way to do that than to conduct important research? I don't want to say it was a complete breeze. This was the longest I've ever been away from my family and friends, and I had a tough time with homesickness. I stuck out like a sore thumb, and people on the street often went out of their way to shout blanc at me, which is the Haitian word for white. But every challenge has allowed me to grow, and I do not have any regrets about visiting Haiti. Every day, I miss Haiti. I miss the way that strangers treat each other, how nobody is a stranger, that everybody is worthy of love, friendship, and kindness. I miss the fried chicken and the plantains. I miss the beautiful people who, despite struggling, are happy nonetheless. I miss the music and the dancing and the motorcycle rides. I miss the feeling of solidarity, of living with different people and being there with them. I miss being forced to reflect. I urge each and every one of you, if you haven't already, to step outside of your comfort zone and experience something that is entirely new to you. Haiti helped me grow on a personal level, but it also helped me discern about my life. I came to Creighton as a pre-med student, and upon discovering anthropology, I've been dedicated to solving the social issues behind injustice. The Jesuits teach us not to be satisfied with the way things are, and Haiti taught me that I can't be. Haiti forced me to reflect upon the world in which we live, and the world in which we should live. And that is why we are here today, to discover our passions and be called to act. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll introduce Pat O'Connor now. Right now. Should we do questions now? Yeah, do you have any questions for Augusta? Your experience?
It's okay if you don't.
Yeah. When you were conducting your research, what were some of your methods? Like, was it interviewing or?
Yeah, so I kind of stuck to the anthropological tradition and did a lot of qualitative research. So I worked with a translator, and we conducted interviews at a local hospital. In addition to that, I did some participant observation through volunteering at the hospital, as well as some strict observation where I would just sit in the waiting room and observe what was going on. And then I've been qualitatively analyzing the data as well and looking for themes that have emerged. Yeah, Hannah?
Where did you live when you were in Haiti?
I lived on the campus of a little university. The university was extremely small, about 100 students went there. And it was a social work university that houses American, usually PhD students who, while they're living there, can teach classes. And since I don't have like an advanced degree, I was teaching English. That's part of their curriculum. And it was in Thomason, which is up the mountain from Port-au-Prince. Yeah.
Was there anything that you thought would help you prepare better, or even while you were there, some resources, something that you needed that would help you make this
I really feel like I did go there prepared. I had been researching Haiti for years before I got to go. So I felt like I understood, as well as I could have, the culture from that outside perspective. I think what would have made it easier for me is if I had known someone while I was down there. But at the same time, I'm really grateful that I didn't and had that time to really reflect upon who I was by myself.
Great. Any other questions? No? Thank you, Augusta.
Thank you.
If you guys could just give us a minute, we're going to look at the microphone.
Did you know how to
Is this a mic?
No.
All right. Okay. That's all right.
I can record your phone.
Sure, yeah.
Sorry about that, guys. You're welcome. Thank you.
All right. Hi, my name is Pat O'Connor, and I'm a second-year med student here at Creighton. And this past summer, I led a group of 5 other medical students on a Project Cura trip to India. Today, I want to... Can you hear me in the back, Lick? A little bit louder? Okay. And today, I want to tell you a little bit about my trip. I want to talk to you a little bit about the kind of the purpose of short-term medical service trips, and tell you a few things I learned while abroad, specifically about the differences I saw in the doctor-patient relationship I saw in India. And I want to start in the middle. Let's see. I have a blank slide. Oh, there. Okay. And I want to start with a story. So we were in the northeast of India, and we were with our Jesuit brother contact there. And we were walking through this rural mountainous village, and we were just going on a village visit. We weren't doing anything that day. We were just going to go check out the village. And as we walk down the street, we see this man who's sitting outside of his home, and he's just hanging out. And he sees us coming, and we stick out like a sore thumb in rural India. And he invites us in his house, and he's very excited to see us because we're obviously from very, very far away and very new to India. And he shows us everything. He's very, very excited, even though we don't speak his language, he doesn't speak ours. We can't really communicate effectively, but he shows us everything in his home. And we see the cooking fire in the corner of the house with the pile of ashes and embers, and it's still smoking, and there's pots and pans on the wall. There's about 10 different cow skulls mounted on the wall too, proudly. And There's giant woven containers to store the rice. There's a huge mortar and pestle, and a big row of firewood. And this was pretty fascinating to me. You know, it's like House Hunters India or something. You know, just seeing how people live. And we were thanking him, and we're leaving, and most of my group is out the door. And he motions that I should grab something down off the wall. I should grab something, and it kind of looked like a bale of hay. And so I grabbed this thing down off the wall, and he motions that I should put it on, put it over my shoulders. And he grabs a hat and he puts it over my head, and he starts laughing at me. And I must look ridiculous. I'll show you the photo in a sec. And then he motions for my friend to take a photo of him and I together. And this was his gift to me, I guess. Here's the photo. Oh, no. Can I go back with this technology? Maybe I'll just see the arrows. Yeah, can we go back? Sorry, guys. One more. Okay, great. Here's the photo. So here I am. Thanks. But this is a traditional rain jacket made of, I think, grasses. And I was really amazed, and I do look pretty ridiculous. But actually, and I'm smiling in this photo. But this is in the middle of the trip, and I'm actually feeling really, really overwhelmed. I had never been basically abroad to any third world country before. And I was just overwhelmed by India. So even though I'm smiling, the emotion I'm feeling right now is fear and anxiety. I'm wondering, what the hell am I doing here? Why am I wearing this rain jacket? You know, what is this? Who is this guy next to me? And I'm wondering, what am I doing here in India? And to answer that question, I kind of want to talk about why I wanted to go on a service trip in general, in the first place. It was a little over a year ago, and I first heard about Project Cura in the med school here. It's run by medical students, which is really cool, and you can go to lots of different countries. And you know, I was interested in India, but there were a couple of big questions I had that I wanted answering. The first big question that I thought I could maybe answer by going abroad on a service trip was, I wanted to see how poor people lived in poor countries. I'd just never seen that before, and I was very curious about that. The second big question that I wanted answering was, I wanted something to compare our healthcare system to. American healthcare is very unique. We put so much money into it, and I just had no way. I wanted to compare it to something else, and I thought an Indian healthcare would be very, very different. You know, someday I'm going to be a doctor. Knock on wood, and you know, I just I wanted something to compare it to so that I could better figure out my place in our American healthcare system. And during the months leading up to the trip, as we prepared and planned and got things organized and bought plane tickets and stuff, I was excited to go. I was really excited to go, and I was excited to do service abroad. You guys can stop. Oh, yeah. Okay, great. I was really excited to do service abroad. As a first-year medical student, you don't have a whole lot of patient interaction. You learn a lot in the classroom and from books, and you don't save any lives. You don't heal anyone. You don't help anyone. And I think anyone who's in healthcare or there's that desire to help people. And so I was just very excited to do service abroad at the idea that maybe I could go abroad and help someone in India. Now, let me tell you briefly what we did. The trip was about 5 weeks long. The first 3 weeks were in the northeast of India. We partnered with the Jesuits there, and they had a lot of insight into the culture and into people's lives. That was a fascinating. It was a great. They were great hosts. Then we we spent a week in mainland India, in Pune, and did some health camps there. And then the last week we did tourist stuff and saw the Taj Mahal. You know. But while we were in the Northeast, and I was still very excited to do some service, one of the Jesuits said, he said, "You know, Patrick, the point of your trip was not service." And I was like, "What?" You know, I've been calling this a service trip. And he said, "For the amount of money that you spent coming over here, we could have trained a nurse practitioner or physician's assistant here in Northeast India." And that really struck me because you know, I thought I was spending money to go do service to help others, to do something abroad and be effective in that way. But if the point of the trip was service, then maybe for the amount of money we spent, maybe it wasn't worth it. Maybe the trip wasn't a success. And I really had to think about that. The other option, of course, is that, you know, maybe this was a service learning trip. Maybe the point of the trip was our own personal education. Maybe as medical students, maybe we weren't, you know, going abroad to save lives. Maybe it was about exposure and education. And, you know, I'll tell you a few things I learned from the trip today, and hopefully I can express how much I learned, but maybe I can just tell you, I learned a lot in India, and I saw a lot in India. And from that standpoint, I think the trip was a great success. All right. So I did throw in a meme here. This is the first world problems meme, in case you don't know. I spent too much money on my service trip abroad. But it's really good to think about the money and where it's going, and you know, for the amount of money you spend, is the service worth it, or you know, what is the purpose of the trip here? So. Yeah. Okay. All right. And the next part of my talk, I want to talk about something that I found really different and fascinating that I saw in India. Specifically, the doctor-patient relationship I saw in India. Let me just ask you guys, who's in healthcare? Who in healthcare? Anybody? Like, okay, maybe like a third. Is everyone else students then? Are you guys students? Okay. Are you hoping to be in health professions someday? Okay, great. So when I talk about the doctor-patient relationship, maybe you can just imagine healthcare worker-patient relationship, because it's the same thing. I'm just coming from a medical standpoint since I'm in medical school. But for the first 9 days we were in the Northeast, we were at Holy Cross Hospital with the Sisters of the Holy Cross in Tura in Meghalaya in Northeast India. Tura is a small city by Indian standards. It's maybe 150,000 or so. So it's rural and remote, and there's just 2 hospitals there. One of them is the Holy Cross Hospital. There's about 100 beds there. About 50 were full when we were there before the monsoon season, and they see a lot of malaria, basically, in that area. Let me describe a typical doctor-patient interaction that I saw there, because it was run by sisters, and there were 3 sister doctors, and you know, we didn't know whether to call them doctor sisters or sister doctors, but I think it's 6 sister doctors. But it was kind of surprising at first, because let me describe a typical interaction. We would follow them around on rounds in the morning in the hospital, and as one of the sister doctors would walk up to a patient, let's say it's a young 15-year-old girl who has malaria and has been having alternating fevers and is maybe a little anemic and is in the hospital for a good reason. The sister doctor would walk up and maybe pull down her eye, maybe feel on her belly, maybe check her capillary refill, you know, press on her hand, maybe ask about a symptom or 2, and then she'd look at the vital signs on the chart and tell the nurse a couple of orders. and then move on. And that sounds like a completely normal interaction, right? That's just how medicine works, right? But what I didn't see was any emotional interplay. The girl on the bed was clearly sick and suffering, you know, and maybe that's the touchy-feely side of me or Americans or whatever. But there was no consoling or comforting or soothing by the doctor, and that was a little shocking at first because in the med school, the first year you practice those consoling, comforting, soothing techniques. You practice reflection, validation, all these doctor-patient interaction, emotional techniques to help have a better relationship with someone. And so I was really kind of wondering, you know, well, do the sisters, do they care about their patients? I was left wondering that. And let me leave you with that question, and let me compare what that doctor-patient relationship to what I've seen in the U.S. Before medical school, I worked as a scribe at an ER for about 7 months, and so I guess that would be the aspect, the part of our American healthcare system that I've seen the most of. A scribe is someone who you wheel a little laptop around on wheels, and you follow your doctor around, and you type up the medical record, right? So I got to see the ER doctors' patient interactions very intimately, because I'd be in the room and out of the room with them. And at the ER, there was ERs are a very, very interesting place. They're federally mandated. You have to see every patient. You have to give them a qualifying screening exam. And I'd like to say that I think there's a customer service aspect to healthcare and medicine today. And I saw that in the ER. There are patient satisfaction surveys that are ubiquitous in American healthcare that I didn't see in India. The sisters were concerned with, you know, keeping their patients alive. They didn't really care about patient feedback. And so at the ER, I'd also like to say that that I think it was the patient interaction that was the most difficult part of the ER. It was a very, very emotional place, high stress, and I think that was, you know, if that was the thing that angered me the most, watching these interactions, you know, if my reaction was to get very angry or very, very sad watching some of these patient interactions, then I can only imagine what it was like for the doctor. About a year ago at the med school, we had a lecture on the doctor-patient relationship, and the psychiatrist who was speaking said she mentioned a survey of first-year residents, and the survey was asking them, what is the hardest part of the first year of your residency program? And, you know, as first-year residents, you'd probably assume that it was the long hours, or the workload, or maybe crippling student debt, or family issues, or something like that. That would be the hardest part of their job. But the hardest part of their job was actually the patient interactions. And I think that's true in a lot of medicine, and I think that was true for the ER doctors. And so I want to just kind of compare that there are many, many different environments for doctor-patient interactions, but what I saw in India was very professional and businesslike, but it wasn't emotional. The sister doctors didn't do soothing or express emotional compassion, really, that I saw that the doctors in the ER had to do. And getting back to my question about whether the sisters cared for their patients, you know, I kind of assumed they did. I just didn't really know. Let me tell you about a hospital policy they had that I thought was really creative. One day I was in the ICU at the Holy Cross Hospital, and there was a 3-year-old boy in there who had a respiratory infection, and he was having trouble breathing. He was using all of his muscles to breathe, and he was you know, like really, really in distress. And you probably had RSV. But the treatment for this is an albuterol nebulizer. It's this medication you put into a machine, makes it into a gas. You breathe it in. You know, it's a breathing treatment, and it opens up. Well, it would open up his airways and allow him to breathe. But what the sisters do is they have this policy that they make the family leave the ICU, walk down to the pharmacy at the end of the hallway in the hospital, and then they make them buy the albuterol themselves. And these people are really, really poor. They don't have any money, but they have to spend a little bit of it to buy this albuterol, the medication. And then they walk it back to the ICU, hand it to the nurse, and then the nurse will put it into the machine and give it to the child. And I thought that this was a really creative hospital policy because, and the reason they do it is to communicate to the family how important it is and how dangerous the child's condition is. And I thought, well, if they're getting so creative with this, with their hospital policies, you know, if they're designing these things to kind of almost manipulate the family into really getting behind the care of the patient, I thought that they must care. And I knew that they cared when they had to care for me. I got the worst rash of my life while in India. It was really, really bad. I won't tell you the details, but it was very, very scary. And the sisters took care of me, but they did it in a very interesting way. They would ask how I was doing at every meal. Is it better? Is it worse? Is the rash dry, wet? Are you bleeding? Is it crusty? You know, all of these things. You know, how is this medication doing? How are you doing on this? But they never asked if I was scared or if I was angry or anything like that. And I got better, and I felt cared for. All right. And so to close, I think that you can show compassion in very different ways, and each of us gets to choose how to show that compassion. You know, whether it's meeting your patient's emotional needs, because patients come to you when they're most vulnerable and they're going through emotional crises. Or you could choose to put your effort into making policy decisions, creative hospital policies that I was really impressed by. And to sum up the service learning stuff that I talked about at the beginning, this transition, my own transformation from thinking that I wanted to go abroad to help other people to realizing that I had more to learn than I had to give. I realized that the best thing I could give was actually my ability to receive their own gifts. One day we went to a Mother Teresa house, and I was really expecting to do some service there. I was really excited. I thought, okay, here I can volunteer. Here I can sweep or, you know, wash sheets or serve meals. I can actually get some work done. And I was kind of thwarted there too, because they actually let us do a little bit of work for like 10 minutes, and the rest of the day we sang and like danced with the people there instead. And so that was my form of service, to learn and accept the gifts of the people that they gave me. So I guess I just want to leave you with the thought that the next time you walk into a patient's room or a stranger's house, you really think about what you're giving to them and remain open to what they could give to you. And you know, if the stranger in that house motions for you to grab something down off the wall, and they tell you to put it on, and maybe put on a hat, and they start laughing at you. And if they tell your friend to start taking a photo of you, I hope that you accept that gift that they're giving them and be open to that. And even if you're scared, I hope that you'll smile. All right, thanks for listening. Here's my final photo of us dancing in India. All right, thank you.
Anyone have some questions for Pat?
How many men do, just out of curiosity, go on a trip like that? What size was your group?
We had 6 in my group. Yeah. and I think there were a handful of other trips. The biggest group was like 10 or so.
I had a question actually. How does the care there that you saw on your service trip change when you were going to deliver care when you graduate?
That's a really good question, and I'm not really sure because I've seen many different kinds of doctor-patient relationships, and it's going to be tough to find a balance between real compassion and then also taking care of myself. You know, I think the sisters there, they weren't burned out at all, and they could go about their lives very, very well. And the ER doctors were, some of them were very burned out. So, yeah, it's something I'm going to continue thinking about.
Oh, that's good. I like how you highlighted knowing your audience, kind of, to take advantage of the situation. Go ahead.
So your Jesuit fellow contact,
Yeah.
had he already been involved in the community before you went there? And how did that work out where you decided to go to this specific community?
So we actually had the Jesuits here at Creighton are partnered with the Jesuits in the northeast of India, and so we actually stayed with a number of different Jesuits there. And the guide I mentioned was actually a Jesuit brother who was like our tour guide for a couple of days in this particular city. But we were actually in many different cities in the Northeast, and it was a great partnership. I totally recommend going with Jesuits or partnering with a university. I think that's the best way to get into a community that you're unfamiliar with.
Good question. Really quick before we break, I wanted to say maybe Pat and Augusta, if they have a couple minutes. I know a lot of you are students in here. Maybe they'll stick around after if you have any specific questions for them. And then I apologize for the technology difficulties and bearing with us. And then I also passed around attendance sheets, so if you didn't get a chance to sign in, if you want, there's some down here. They're still going around. So, and also there's surveys in your packet, if you don't mind filling those out, and then you could just leave them up here and I'll turn them in for you guys. So, thank you. Thanks again to our speakers.
Yeah, we'll stick around.
All right.